Hi there, it's Katie Crysdale here from Lakeview Aquatic Consultants. Welcome back, or welcome if you are new here. Each week, I hop on here and I do a YouTube live video talking about the weekly newsletter. So, in this video, I'm going to be talking about the November 5th, 2025 Pool 8 newsletter. In case you're new here, the reason I do this each week is a number of you have stated that you don't have space, you don't have capacity in your inbox each week for another newsletter. So, this is your opportunity to listen to me chat about the newsletter, why I included the articles I did, what are some of the trends that I'm seeing, and then you can access any specific stories or specific articles you want to reference directly in the description box below. So, let's get right into it. Each week in the newsletter, I do spend the first part of the newsletter talking about the kind of the theme of the week or a topic that's been on my mind. And for this particular week, the title of the newsletter is Circle of Control versus Circle of Concern. What I had in mind when I shared this idea comes from author Stephen Covey. Some of you might be familiar with the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And aquatics and recreation in general, we have a lot of different things going on each day: dynamic work environment, shifting conditions, customer expectation, industry considerations. And so there's a lot of things that we need to be aware of, like our circle of concern, but there's many fewer things that we actually have a direct circle of influence or a circle of control. So, the main theme of this week's newsletter is that I wanted to share some different ideas and hot topics that I've been hearing about in the industry. They may not form a cohesive direction yet for a lot of aquatic facilities or aquatic professionals, but these are things that I'm hearing and seeing that lead me to think that these are coming down the pipe for lots of people in lots of different locations. So, the first topic that I shared this week was the topic of guest violence towards staff. This is something that has been creeping up over the last 12 months, I would say, all over the world. Most documented I've seen is at pools in Australia, but I don't think it's more common in Australia. I think it's just been better documented in the public or in the media in Australia. This has been interactions between swimmers, guests, parents, and lifeguards and recreation staff. And frankly, it's really terrifying to see these types of confrontations occurring. This was also a trend at the recent World Water Park Association show where businesses were sharing these viral flash mobs, these, storming through the gates kind of thing that is very concerning to me as a trend that we might see. Hopefully, we don't see it in Canada, but we realistically may see it as people are less and less patient with customer service and frontline staff. The second trend I shared in this week's newsletter was regarding some businesses who've decided that they're not going to implement surge pricing. This is definitely something we're primarily seeing in the private sector, so not as much with your municipal and local nonprofit that may have to follow a strict rate or fee bylaw. But this surge pricing, I'm sure a lot of you have experienced it from Uber and Lyft rideshare to taxi or to tickets through Ticketmaster or even event admission. Frankly, it's gotten a little bit out of hand in my personal opinion and experience as a consumer. And so it was interesting to talk to some individuals in the European market talking about that surge pricing is definitely an opportunity cost when you don't implement it. The business is leaving money on the table. But for some of the parks at a recent Zoom meeting I attended, they determined that it wasn't worth the damage to their brand and public trust to implement surge pricing, that their guests and their annual members, they were very, very happy to see consistent pricing day over day, week over week, date versus date, and that's the direction that they have intentionally gone for the foreseeable future. One of these other trends that I saw in recent times that I was a bit surprised but makes complete sense is that discrepancies in weather applications on people's smartphones is leading to unpredictable usage of outdoor facilities. So I thought this was something just in my particular household where my phone app will display a different forecast, temperature, weather conditions in my community versus my husband's phone. and which forecast do we follow, which forecast is more realistic, which one do we plan by. And apparently, this is a trend all over the world because some of these same European amusement park operators stated that they were seeing very much last minute bookings the morning of, when families or people who intend to go to the park, they don't want to book until they can confirm it's not going to rain. Or, for example, here in Western Canada, I would say in the summer when we have forest fire season, when people can confirm that it's not going to be smoky or it's not going to be cold. And so this is one of those data points that I don't know what you can do with this information, but it is something to be aware of, that it's changing historic behaviors where maybe people would pre-book their trips or pre-book their admission to a particular venue weeks or months in advance. And now it's very much on the fly, which is making it difficult for organizations to staff accordingly because you can't staff up the morning of. You can sell out the morning of, but you can't necessarily bring in more people at the last possible moment. Another big trend, I know it's already over, we're 2 weeks into November, but Halloween is growing in popularity across different types of recreation complexes, including water parks and dry amusement parks. This is not really a surprise in North America in the sense that Halloween, a harvest feast, autumnal festivals have always been fairly popular insofar as kids love to dress up. It's a pretty easy, accessible, affordable decoration, participation, activity opportunity. But definitely the Europeans and other types of facilities were sharing that the demand for Halloween in different geographic regions or markets that have not been historically big on Halloween has been somewhat surprising to them, but they're going to have to get on board for 2026 ASAP because they're noticing that their customers, their members, or their community is spending that money to go to Halloween activities at their competitors' properties. So whether it is a haunt, like a scary event, whether it's more of a family-oriented harvest event, this is definitely something that's coming down the pipe. And so when we talk about implementation at your local community pool, obviously it may not be realistic to do a haunted house or anything scary, but how can you look at some sort of simple programming to increase participation at your aquatic facility, maybe the day of Halloween, the week of Halloween? How can we bring in different customers and guests from the usual audience for these types of special events that are done at a relatively affordable budget? So nothing crazy. Maybe you're getting some pumpkins, maybe you're getting some face paint, some balloons, letting staff wear costumes around the building. Doesn't have to be super complex, but getting into the groove of creating this new opportunity in October when historically may not have had anything until the end of the year with Christmas or Valentine's Day. Further on in the newsletter, I also talked about the concern with bundling and a la carte pricing. So there has been consistently a lot of a la carte pricing that I have seen as I've been traveling as a hotel guest, as a airline guest, as a facility guest. And this has reached the breaking point for some people. I know that I was personally particularly frustrated when I stayed at a hotel in September. This was a very maybe not very high-end hotel, but it was not an inexpensive hotel. It was over $250 per night, and everything was a la carte. So everything was extra, and it reminded me very much of Nevada and resort fees, how there has been a new law actually implemented in Nevada to advertise the real price to guests who are booking accommodation. No more of this $29 resort fee, $10 Wi-Fi fee, $30 parking fee, $10 housekeeping fee, $5 environmental fee. Like, it's gotten really out of hand. And it used to just be Las Vegas, in my personal opinion. And now Nevada has this new rule. But now it seems to be trickling out across some markets in the US. I haven't seen it quite yet in Canada, but this hotel in Florida where they wanted to charge you extra to sit in the chair by the pool, the first row of chairs. Not a cabana, not food and beverage, but just an extra fee to sit in a chair at the pool. I understand different classes of category in bookings. Like on cruise line, there are premium chairs around certain parts of the ship or the pool that are accessible to certain loyalty clubs or certain like suite guests, but they're not extra money. They're just, earmarked for participation. So this bigger picture of unbundling or a la carte fees, I really think we've reached a point in the current financial conditions where people are just frustrated and they've had it. I'm not sure this is the way I would recommend for anybody to go in any type of facility at the moment. It's just very upsetting to not be able to budget for your vacation, not be able to budget for your trip when you're getting hit with all of these surprise costs. Further down in the newsletter, I shared that I did make a last minute decision to go to the IAPA Expo in Orlando this weekend. I don't know if I will actually make it there because of the current shutdown in the United States with the air traffic controllers, TSA, the government shutdown. They've had to start reducing flights, and Orlando is one of the airports that will be having cuts of at least 10%. So fingers crossed I actually get to IAPA. That's my plan this weekend, and I will be chatting about IAPA in next week's newsletter. I will be vlogging a little bit, but you can definitely see my video from 2024 when I went to the IAPA conference and expo. I really enjoy it. It's a unique experience. I know there can be some pushback that it's not just aquatics. It is a lot of a bigger segment of amusement, recreation, etc. But I find the connections and the opportunities to network and to meet with suppliers and tour different facilities very, very valuable. So I look forward to sharing that with you and bringing you along in some sort of vlog format. I don't want to redo everything I did last year. But I would also say my videography skills have significantly improved since last year. So stay tuned for what I can manage in terms of workload for vlogging that trip. I shared two products that I'm really excited about that I really recently learned about through different opportunities for webinars and product education. The first was an acrylic insert that Waterplay out of British Columbia is showcasing for spray parks and splash pads. So you can customize a design that is then done in, I believe, resin, and it goes into the splash pad around the play feature or the water jet. And it can be inset amongst your safety flooring, like your life floor, or it can be inset in other types of surfaces. I need to get some more information about how this works in real life. I think it would be really slippery, but they are splash pad professionals, so they must know what they're doing. And I'm super curious to see more about this particular product, which I was completely unaware of until I attended this Waterplay webinar earlier this week. I'm so hoping that I can see this maybe in person in IAPA. Then the other piece that was shared with me recently is a customizable, accessible ramp system where you are building blocks to build up the right level for the ramp as a transition. This is kind of a do-it-yourself kit, kind of like Lego, but with components that allow you to build ramps to create accessible means of entry and egress in transition areas like a step onto a condo balcony or a step into a business. Those of you who've been here for a while know that I have a real passion for accessibility. It's interesting because I'm an able-bodied person. I would not have historically said that I'm a crusader or anything like that for accessibility. But ever since my husband has had mobility issues the last 5-6 years, I've really started to notice hostile architecture and clear gaps in the intent of accessibility law versus the implementation of law. And businesses, including clients I've worked with who've chosen not to be accessible, I can't necessarily change their decision, but I do notice in my personal life instances where your choice to be inaccessible, to exclude an audience of people in wheelchairs or mobility devices or strollers or canes is really, really disconcerting and disappointing when it really is not that hard to do in a lot of cases. But I'm going to get off that soapbox. It is something that I continue to work towards with our clients and with our different businesses. As always, the last part of the newsletter is a variety of news articles that I've been reading throughout the week. This week, it's no different. It's a real hodgepodge of different topics, ranging from an indoor water park in Michigan that is now offering a seasonal pass, but in winter. I thought this was really neat. Historically in Canada, a lot of indoor pools, we don't see a lot of attendance, let's say from December to April, because it's very cold outside. And although you'd think the pool is warm, people want to come inside and be warm. Pools are drafty when it's minus 40 degrees Celsius outside here in Alberta or wherever in Canada. So historically, I would say as a municipal pool manager, we would see a drop in attendance in the winter months. And so it may be the same at an indoor water park. So what better way than to discount admission or cultivate a new audience who is very budget minded by reaching out to that population and saying, come see us in the winter so you can actually boost your revenue and usage. I shared an article this week about a woman who was charged for not supervising her child who experienced a drowning emergency, a submersion. As I said in the newsletter, I don't typically like to share these incidents where the parents are charged by police for not watching their children. Sometimes it's called neglect, sometimes it's called other things. But in this particular incident, there is a lot more documentation regarding bystanders who, it appears, directed the parent to watch her kid several times before the incident actually occurs. And so, in the presence of that kind of education and attempted enforcement by bystanders, it's a little bit of a different scenario, in my personal opinion. It's not completely out of nowhere without basis that there may be concerns about the care of the child. Further down, I shared an update, which wasn't really an update, about a drowning fatality in Chandler, Arizona earlier this summer. All we know is that it was a private event for a church group and that there are quite a number of lifeguards on duty at that time, but we still don't really know what happened, whether there was an existing medical condition that precipitated the incident, if there was some sort of error that happened. We don't have a lot of details, so that's why I'm going to keep updating this story as more details become available. I shared a very terrible incident regarding two disabled residents in the UK who drowned. That one does require viewer discretion. If you click on that article, it's a really horrible incident. I don't like to share these incidents, but I think it's for the purpose of education that we need to be aware sometimes how outside of the water safety, drowning prevention, aquatic industry, not everyone has the same level of awareness of these things we should be concerned about. And so that's why it came up. I shared an article about the city of Yellowknife in the Northwest Territories, their gorgeous new aquatic facility that opened within the last year. They are going to be doing a sponsorship deal with naming rights. There was an article I shared regarding how we can use car parks or parking lots to create additional revenue for aquatic facilities such as outdoor water parks when they're not being used. This is exactly what I'm describing, where this is a trend. This was not something I had thought about 2 months ago. And then now in the last 6 weeks, I've heard of many, many incidences where different organizations from California to Australia to different places are saying, how can we make money off of our empty parking lot? Or how can we use our parking lot for different events, evenings, weekends, outside of seasons? Can we offer a junk swap? Can we offer a trunk or treat or a drive-through Santa? Can we lease out our parking lot for a harvest fair? What can that look like? And I would say the same thing for a municipal aquatic facility. It requires some planning. It requires maybe some permitting. Special events in your community might require, emergency planning in terms of not blocking roads or having enough garbage cans. But you have the land, you have the space to offer other events. Maybe it's, quote, not your job as the pool manager to come up with these dry events. But if you are squeezed for revenue, or if you're getting complaints from your council or your director that you're not doing enough for the community, you have this wide open space that is available for different types of creative activities. I shared some project updates on the Vernon, BC, the new aquatic center, after there's going to be some transitions. I shared an update on Disney World clarifying uh, accessibility features, basically special requests that were being abused by guests. I shared an update regarding Seminole County in Florida starting to allow front yard residential pool construction, which I understand is both an eyesore, but I'm curious how you're going to fence in or protect people from wandering into the front yard of a home and drowning in a pool. That's a completely new thing for me to consider. Typically, we talk about backyard pools. I shared an article about free swimming lessons being given to underserved girls in a community. I talked about a trend we've seen repeatedly in the last couple of months, if you've subscribed to the newsletter, starting to close in outdoor pools to be used year round in regions where there is not the budget to spend on a brand new indoor aquatic facility. So in this particular incidence, the community is spending $13 million, which is still quite a bit of money, but they're able to get a year-round aquatic center by closing in an existing outdoor pool with, infrastructure overhead. I shared some articles about free diving. I hate free diving. I hate the cachet of free diving. But these are the types of topics that trickle down to our guests, our swimmers, our members. You might have Joe from your community who watches something on television or who reads this article about a free diver holding his breath for 24 minutes. We need to be educating about these hazards. We need to be educating our lifeguards, our frontline staff about what to look for, about maybe posting posters, education bulletins, social media posts, that this is something that requires special training, safety, and supervision, and poses a real risk of hypoxia, by passing out because there's so much carbon dioxide built in your system. You pass out underwater, and if there's no lifeguard on duty, you will die. You will have an immersion that leads to brain death after a few minutes. So, not to get on my high horse, a lot of you are aquatic professionals, you know the dangers of free diving, but we need to keep talking about this within the context of people being fed this content and thinking that they can just do it themselves. The last few articles that I shared, there was an article from Rolling Stone regarding the artificial wave pool movement. There was an article regarding a North New Jersey homeowners group that is facing a lawsuit regarding outdoor biathlon that occurred. This is a big trend we've talked about as well in this newsletter in terms of these ad hoc events, whether it's a triathlon, an Ironman, a biathlon, whether it is a commercial event or a local event, that the average person does not know the planning and preparation that is required truly for an open water event, the lifeguard training, the lifeguard preparedness. I'm a pool lifeguard. I'm used to walls. I'm not used to an open water rescue environment where I don't have walls. I don't have the same team members to assist me. It is a very slippery slope just to think I can take a pool lifeguard and stick them on a small man-made lake. I shared a commentary from Minnesota regarding an individual who considers it overreach to allow public health to inspect or control private residential home rentals that are for-profit swimming pool rentals. If you've been here for a while, you know I completely disagree when it comes to residential rentals for profit, i.e., your backyard pool being rented out to make money. That is a completely different purpose from casual use in your home. I do think there should be some oversight, but I wanted to share another perspective. I also shared a story about somebody who was pushed into a pool and their hearing aids, their $6,000 hearing aids were destroyed. I think that we really need to continue talking in our swim lessons and our public education about how it's honestly, it's just not funny or safe to push anyone into the pool. And it's not just dad culture or guy culture. It continues to happen all over the world, all types of events, all types of people. But the number of articles I've read about people who have sustained major spinal cord injuries from being pushed into the pool is just horrible. And so I bring it up because it's a topic that we honestly need to be discussing. I shared an article about a child who was taken off of life support 2 weeks after she was retrieved from the pool. These types of incidences are not categorized as drowning necessarily for statistical purposes. An in-hospital fatality from complications or morbidity associated with a water submersion or non-fatal drowning, that does not always get pulled into drowning fatality characteristics. I shared some articles regarding the dispute in Prince George, British Columbia, regarding the intended 2-year closure of the pool for renovation. And then the community is asking if it's possible to avoid this. I shared a open house idea from the UK where they are increasing access to their inflatable obstacle course, increasing awareness of the product availability by offering it as a free event. And the number of people I talk to who consider their Whibbit, their inflatable obstacle course, a white elephant and don't know how to increase usage, I think this is such a great idea. Do a free day, a trial day, an expose day, let people in to try it. And then if they love it, they'll come back again on a paid inflatable day. The last couple articles I shared were regarding Victoria, BC pool renovation. There's a lot of drama there in terms of British Columbia not having a ton of pools over the next couple of years while one is closed, one is renovated. A discussion of high drowning rates in Maui, Hawaii. And then the last article was regarding a pretty typical proposal we see to renovate a swimming pool in order to make it eligible to host sanctioned swim meets. So if your pool does not qualify to host swim meets or special events, it can make it difficult to justify operations or bringing in revenue. And so it is not uncommon to see that communities are trying to specifically achieve the ability to host regional, provincial swim meets and special events. At the end of each newsletter, I do try and share a couple of our recent videos. If you're listening to this audio, you're on YouTube, you know that we have a lot of content that we post on YouTube. And so in this particular newsletter, I shared the audio of the previous week's newsletter, which is what you're listening to right now for November 5th. And then I shared 2 recent videos that we released. One regarding accessible first aid. I talked to Kate Connell. Some of you know her as Equitable Aquatics. And then I also talked with, I just shared a piece regarding how a lot of aquatic professionals don't always realize that their emails are FOIPable or they are subject to freedom of information requests, privacy requests, especially if you work for a municipality, a nonprofit. And I'm not saying anybody's doing anything bad in their emails, but being aware that comments ranging from why you did or did not hire somebody, to budgeting, to program management, to anything could be subject to a freedom of information request if you work for a publicly funded facility in any country or region or jurisdiction that has those types of laws. So that is it for today. This is a quick recap, maybe not so quick because we're up to 27 minutes here of the November 5th, 2025 newsletter. If you like the newsletter, please consider subscribing in the link down below or subscribing on YouTube to be notified each time we post one of these live videos or our latest content. Thanks so much for being here, and I will catch you later this week in the audio version of our next newsletter. Thanks so much, and bye for now.